This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Shalom Aleichem. We continue the Torah Devorah in Parak Tes, the 9th chapter. We continue. Let's just focus on a few points that the Torah Devorah mentioned. That in order for a person to be connected to the Shechina and davak to the Shechina without it being separating from him, the Torah Devorah says it's necessary for a person to be married. Before a person is married, he says it's pshita she'ein imay Shechina klal. And the way this works is that a person is surrounded by two nekevos, the bina, the midah of ima ilah, and the Shechina down here, which is Shechina. And in other words, the same way in Shamayim, there's Tiferes. There's Tiferes is the Zachar, so to speak, and it's surrounded by Bina, which is Nekeva, and Malchus, which is Nekeva. So too, the Shechina can only be with a person if he's similar to the upper model. So the upper model again is Bina, Tiferes, Malchus. So the lower model is the Shechina, Adam, and the Nekeva. So long as a person is married with his wife, so then that's the Nekeva down here, the Shechina is able to be mizdavek to him. And the Talmud Devorah said there are 3 instances where a person cannot be with his wife: when she's a nida, or during the week when a person's oisek b'Torah, or if a person's traveling. And at this time, the Shechina could still cling with the person and does not leave them. Now, just a few very interesting points. Firstly, the Rav Goldberg points to Rashi in Parshas Vayechi, Ki alisa mishkevei avicha az chilalta yitzui Allah. When you went up on my couch bed, you defamed my couch. Rashi says the shame that was oile on my bed, which is the Shechina, which was typically on the mita of Yaakov Avinu. So here we see that concept, that in the Makom, where a person is b'nekeva tata, that is the Makom of the Shechina, meaning the Shechina comes from above when a person is b'yichud with the nekeva below. The Talmud Devorah also said that the pekida le'ishtai needs to be dafka at the time that the Shechina is in its place. And Rav Goldberg cites the Gemara in Eruvin on Samach Gimel and Beis that when the Aroin and the Shechina were shaloi b'makayman, they were aser b'tashmish. Now, a few very interesting points, and that is, how do we explain the behavior of Moshe Rabbeinu? The Talmud Devorah wrote a Sefer, the Ramak wrote a Sefer called Or Yakar, that the Perush Hakdamas V'Sha'arim quotes very often, and he says, he's bothered by this question: if the Shechina can only be with a person when they're together with Nekeva Tata, then how do we explain Moshe Rabbeinu, who is Mana Atzma Min Ha'isha? Also, how do we explain the behavior of Ben Azai, who he was Chashka Nafshe B'Torah? So and they were Zachat Hashras Shechina, even though they were not together with their wife. So basically, the Ramak says there are 2 ways to influence the Shamayim. There are 2 ways how to be payal into Masakin. Either through physical activity, and the physical activity, so to speak, creates a replica in Shamayim. In other words, by a person being miyached be'ishtai physically, that causes yichud be'elyonim, or a person could go straight up there to the elyonim and do it directly, which is like a more direct way to do it. So Moshe Rabbeinu and Ben Azai, who they were kulai ruchni, they were able to make these yichudim without the mashal. In other words, instead of being miyached be'ishtai, and then all of a sudden we have yichud between Bina and Tiferes and Malchus, they went straight there and they were miyached, Bina, Tiferes and Malchus, so they didn't have to do it al yidei ishtai. Now another interesting thing is, the Talmud Devorah was bothered, what does a person do when they're on the road and their wife is not with them? So he says that you daven tfilas hadarach. So The Zohar in Parshas Bereshis, which, by the way, this week it's still Parshas Bereshis. Yes, even though yesterday I said this week is Parshas Bereshis, today it's also still Parshas Bereshis. The Zohar asked him, Tomer Mishiyotzel Adarach, and his wife's not there, does the Shechina leave? So the Zohar says, come and see someone who leaves on the road should pray to God that the Shechina should stay with him. So basically, this is a much deeper meaning of Tfilas Haderach. It's not just, you're on the road and you don't know what kind of dangerous situation there could be, but the dangerous situation is the potential for the Shechina to depart from a person, and then the prayer is therefore a prayer that the Shechina should remain with the person despite the fact that she'enoi be'ishtai. Okay, now let us continue. Haroitzel is davig in Bas HaMelech. Somebody who wants to unite with the daughter of the king, and that's the Shechina, v'shaloi siparim imenu l'olam, and that the Shechina should never leave a person. Tzarich tchila sheyekashet atzma b'chol minei kishutim. A person has to ornament himself and adorn himself with all kinds of ornaments, u'malbusham na'im, and nice clothing. Now what does that refer to? They refer to V'hem tikunei amidos hanaskaris kulam. That is the rectification of all the midos. So in other words, this whole parak is how to accustom oneself with malchus. Number 1 is not to be a balgaiva. Number 2 is going into galos. Number 3 is yiras Hashem. Number 4 is to be davak le'ishtoi. And in the last paragraph we learned how to be davak, how the Shechina could remain with a person even if they're away from one's wife. Now we're learning if you want the Shechina to be with you, you need to have nice clothing. Now what does that mean? Where do you go shopping? So this is a mashal. Midos toivos. V'achar shatikein atzem b'tikunei, and after you beautify and rectify one's midos, then what one needs to do is yichavein lekabla olav. One should mechavein to accept the Shechina, b'yoisei oisek b'Torah. When one is engaged in learning Torah, v'noisei oil mitzvahs, and one accepts to bear the yoke of mitzvahs, b'soid kavanas hayichud tamad, which he says is translated according to the essence of the meaning of unification. In other words, you want the Shechina with you, fix your midos, and then accept upon yourself to engage in Torah, and accept upon yourself the yoke of mitzvahs. Umiyad hi nises lai, then the Shechina will marry you ve'ena pareshim manner. She won't leave you. V'zeh b'tnai sheyitar v'yikadosh atzma, this is provided that a person purifies and sanctifies himself. V'yachar shutar v'kadosh, and once a person is pure and holy, yichavin l'kayim la she'er ksos v'ayna. Now you gotta fulfill your mitzvah to your wife, namely to the Shechina, which is, you gotta provide for her. So she'er is food. What does it mean to give food to the Shechina? Aleph, lahashpia la b'chol masav shefa min hayamin mezayna. With all of one's deeds, you should bestow shefa on her, which is her food. Now, what is the food for the Shechina? What is the food for the Shechina? Rabbi Goldberg says the food is Torah Masim Tovim, is the food of the Sfira, like the Magen Meisharim says at the end of Beshalach. Torah Masim Tovim go through Malchus to all the Sfiros, even all the way up to Keser. So that is how you provide food to the Shechina. Beis, so you learn. Number 2, L'chasei soleh, you got to provide the Shechina with clothing. Now what does that mean? From the vantage point of Gevura, L'chasei soleh mitzad Gevura, you want to cover her from the vantage point of Gevura, Shelo yishlatu ba chitzonim, so that the chitzonim do not dominate her. Shelo yiyat sad yetzer hara, that there should not be an element of evil inclination be'esek mitzvayseha, in being involved in doing mitzvahs. You want to cover her up from the vantage point of Gevura, that the outer forces should not dominate her. Because wherever the Yetzer is, there's no Shechina. So if you want the Shechina to be there, so then you have to make sure there's no Yetzer there. You have to make sure you're not doing mitzvahs for your own benefit, or to get honor, hamaduma, which is empty honor. Then the Yetzer Hara will be frequent and found in that mitzvah. And then the Shechina runs away. Because kavod is an erva. So you got to cover up the erva. You got to cover up all the ulterior motives when you do the mitzvah. You want to do the mitzvah in the purest fashion. You want to keep it hidden always. Keitzad, how do you do that? Kalmasav, l'shem shamayim. All your actions should be for the sake of heaven. B'li chelek li'yetzer hara, without any portion of the Yetzer Hara. V'chein tefillin. So this is all part of giving clothing to the Shechina. How do you give clothing to the Shechina? You want to hide and cover up any ulterior motives you may have. V'chein tefillin, v'tzitzis, likewise. Tefillin and tzitzis, he meginim gedolim ba'ada, are great protectors on her. Shelo yishatu achitzaynim ba, that the outer forces do not dominate the Shechina, v'yirago b'hem. And therefore you should be accustomed to wearing tzitzis and tefillin. Okay, Rabbi, so we're going to hold it over here. We'll add some points, bli neder, tomorrow, and we'll finish up with executive. We'll see. We'll see what we do. Maybe we'll a brief review, and then Bez Hashem, we will move on to the final chapter. Okay, have a great day, everybody. And if anybody wants to join us tomorrow at 10:30 on Parshas Bereshis, first Shiur of the year. Okay, Kol Tov, everyone. Bracha v'atzlacha.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.